Hello, Charles Knapp. I'm back with another video. This time it's on Florida, Byron Preiss, The Secret, and the Florida Puzzle. Now, I've done a couple of videos previously regarding localization of the Florida puzzle, and I'm not going to go into all of those because this would be really long. I've already got too many slides in here, so I need to get rolling. Okay, the Fountain of Youth Park has been a focus of this hunt for some time. And the reason is pretty clear. There's a lot of clues that might lead you over to the Fountain of Youth. And so I'm going to briefly talk about that. And so let's get rolling here. Well, one thing we absolutely have to do is take in consideration of the artwork by John Jude Palancar. Just beautiful art, and it has a lot of features in it, and there's a couple of things that might lead you to the Fountain of Youth. The Spaniard, and we'll talk about the rocks here in a little bit, and maybe this down here. So let's look. Okay, you always have to look at the verse that goes with the puzzle. So we're going to go through there. I'm not going to cover everything in here. It's way too long, and this is part of the localization part is down here at the end, which is common in Byron's puzzles. So let's get started. I did this kind of backwards because I've done localization for some of the other puzzles, the solved puzzles, Chicago, Cleveland, Boston, and I've done it also for San Francisco, which the cask hasn't been dug up yet. But in any event, I've started with localization, and now I got one thing that we're going to see, and if you've seen my other videos, you'll know that this AMC, American Motors Gremlins, this goes with the Florida puzzle. And specific reasons are, if you look up top, you've got top of this art. This is the large cartoon. You've got moonlight. You've got rain falling. You've got a teardrop shape up here. The tall grass. So the first thing to do is start thinking, well, does this go with Florida? Well, it appears that is the case. So let's get into that. You've got gremlins that are doing various things under this car hood, and you've got a lamp, a street lamp maybe. And when you look at the end of the lines, the verse, even in darkness, like moonlight in tear drops over the tall grass, years pass, rain falls. So the verse that we know goes with Florida has some indications in the large cartoon that they go together. So we the problem with this park, there's a couple of problems. Specifically, it's an archaeological park, and as such, the grounds are treated as archaeological grounds. And I don't think Byron would want you digging around in there. I know the owners of the park, because that's the other problem. It's a privately owned. It's a privately owned park. You have to pay to get in. And even though some of the clues lead you in that direction, I don't think it's inside the park. I think it's very hard to believe that it's inside the park. And Josh Gates has been there if you want to review and see the Expedition Unknown that had this, fine, go for it. But there's been a lot of digging, a lot of GPR, and of course, nothing found. What might work is the back gate on Magnolia Avenue at that corner where you have this tree. It's not really a tall tree, but to the small businessman who's probably this big, you could say, well, that's a tall tree, and you got a lamp up here, a street lamp. And this structure and what it's made out of, there are some possibilities for this corner. And this theory was not my theory. Someone else came up with it. But I think there's a better theory. And here's why. Well, as we start looking, windrows is a nautical term. It's a navigational term. A rose, like a compass rose, these are navigational items. And you also have some indications this might be sailing, because this is a burgee up top here on the top mast of the sailboat. Maybe that's a burgee as well. It certainly looks like it. And that's flown from the top of a sailboat mast. This sailboat is actually called a windrose. And windrose was a sailboat. It was around during Byron's time. So we've got written in water, which happens to be the Spanish immigration, the initial immigration to the United States that was first written in water. The first chapter, written in water. That's the immigration theme. Spanish, near Mind with windrose, blah, blah, blah. Now, Byron does this a lot. He'll take something and use it both meanings. Many terms are ambiguous. They can be used and thought of in more than one, having more than one meaning, more than one image, that sort of thing. But we have sails passed by night. Sails passing the lighthouse by night. So start thinking about lighthouse. You start looking at the history of the lighthouse, and the Don Juan Ponce de Leon discovered La Florida, which is also the land of flowers. We have flowers down here on the land of flowers, the Florida shape right here. This is being the Gulf side. And so, yeah, Florida, Spanish immigration. But we also have some history, some things that start pointing towards maybe the lighthouse. In the art, right up in here, you can see that here's the jewel, and it's surrounded by darkness, and it's up high, just like the light on a lighthouse is up high. He's up above looking down, like the watchkeeper of a lighthouse would be up above watching, on watch, or looking out, looking down. You have Spanish quarries that produce coquina rock, and I believe that's why this is so rocky, and that's meant to be the coquina rock from the Spanish quarries. And as you can see, the lone sentry has analogy between these two, standing watch, a beacon of hope in the darkness. So, and if you look at this, it talks about even in darkness. Notice this is tall, this is up top, he's up top, the watchkeeper's up top. So we've got some parallels there between the art and a lighthouse. And we want to know why this is down here, what's going on down here as well. And I'm not going to go into all the history on the coquina and the rock and how the lighthouse were built of rock. Not the first lighthouse. The first lighthouse started out as a tower, a watch tower, and then a lighthouse, which eventually got destroyed, and then the lighthouse was rebuilt. And so the coquina is important to the history of St. Augustine. And what I've done here is I've enhanced this art to bring out the blue in the art. Because why is all that blue? And you can see here's the blue. Why is that blue? Why not the same shade as up here? Well, there's a reason for that. And the reason is blue is representing water. And if you look at the old maps, I'm going to zoom in here. This is from 1882. This was the original entrance, and there's the watchtower, and here's the first lighthouse, and the current lighthouse is right over in here also. So the entrance was right here, and then they went up and around St. Augustine. And so you had all of this right here. This was land. You can see the depths of the water. They probably did soundings with the rope and a rock or whatever. So, and this was all shoal area and sand, and you couldn't go through there. So this became Conch Island, and down south of that became Bird Island. And you can get a lot of this information off the history. But the blue here, getting back to the blue, is covering these rocks. The shoals, there was a lot of fill in here, and the channel was changed. So now where the heart, and also the tide going in and out, is you have the coquina, which comes from the water line, because it's a mixture of sea items like shells and stuff like that. That's where the Spanish harvested the rock, was down along there. And also there's actually a spot right there that's been preserved where they actually showed they were removing the coquina that had one time been covered by seawater. So that's why it's blue in there. And you can see right down here, Conch Island and then Bird Island. It's no longer an island. It's all connected. Looking at a modern day navigational chart, you can see the lighthouses right here, and that's teardrop shape. Byron uses teardrop in with more than one meaning. But you can see now that the channel's not over here. No longer there. And this is Salt Run. Salt is mentioned in the verse. Shows a little better. Salt Run right here. Bird Island right here. This is now Anastasia State Park. And so we're talking about moonlight and teardrops. And the first thing I thought when I saw this shape right here was that's a bird. Oop, let me get it back. I'm sorry. That's a bird. That's a bird right there. Get right back to that looks like a bird. Bird Island. The rock. Prudential is the rock. That's what I thought of when I saw the rock down here. Prudential. The rock. It doesn't have anything to do with insurance. It actually has to do with the actual rock. The Rock of Gibraltar. And here's a painting by James Webb showing the rock. And so this, I just noticed within the last 24 hours, I got to thinking about down below and also on the painting, there's a lot of green. If you look closely down at the base, you can see the green down here. Why do that? Why is that green down there? Well, actually in the painting, this is green. Okay, little technical difficulty. There's a lot of green in here. And it's going like this, just like in the painting by Palancar. Well, there's a lot of reasons. That's why the green water around the Rock of Gibraltar can be caused by several things. Phytoplankton, depth, sediment, weather. So it's acknowledged that water does look green. That's a confirmation that that's the Rock of Gibraltar, is that green water down there. And here you are, a little close up. Certainly it's green. And why Gibraltar? Well, Gibraltar is very important in the history of Florida. And I'm not going to cover everything. I need to get through this quickly, but the rock was a big problem between the British and Spain, and it also involved the Revolutionary War of America, and it was also the siege itself was incredible. If you actually look at it, there were like 60,000 men, 49 ships, against 5,000 defenders and a siege held. Now, that siege of Gibraltar was a factor in ending the American Revolutionary War. And the reason for that is Spain and France were allies of the Patriots in the Revolutionary War. They were fighting against the British. It tells you right up here, France and Spain on the side of the American, Patriots against Britain. And then when all of this settled out, that determined the fate of Gibraltar. It also determined what happened to Florida. How it went flip and flop between Spain and between the Britain country, and where it ended up. Florida became a British colony until 1784, and then British divided the territory into two colonies, East Florida and West Florida. And you can see that was after the Revolutionary War. And some of this stuff came out of these treaties of Paris, and there were a couple treaties before and after. The 7 Years' War. I can't go through all this. I just don't have the time, but you can look it up. But Gibraltar is in there because of the Spanish ties, the importance to the Florida history, the importance to American history. And it tells you right here that the Gibraltar was returned to Spain after the Treaty of 1783. Let's look at some more history. The history of the lighthouse itself, there's some good articles in there. And it talks about the coquina shells, the Treaty of Paris, some other things about the oil lamps set in silver. So the lighthouse is looking pretty good for here. And not just some history you see at the Fountain of Youth Park. Now, so we kind of covered, this is blue, but this is not over here. And what I believe is the lighthouse went from a tower and then to another lighthouse and then to its final lighthouse. So I think, and this is just my opinion, that this part is symbolizing the change in the height and the structure of the lighthouse. That's covered right here in the history. It was originally just a watchtower. The wooden structure was replaced with a tower built of coquina. And then the 1870s, the tower was threatened, and then there was a new Augustine lighthouse that was approved for funding in the late 1870s, and that was completed around 1874, and that's what we're seeing today. There were many keepers of the light. Right now it's all automated. Back in the day, now this keeper, he fell to his death when his lashing of scaffolding gave way. And that's important to the back of the book. And what we started out talking about initially a little bit was the AMC gremlins and falls. That's included in another video. I'm trying to stay away from that. But also the spirals here, like the spirals of the spark plug on the small cartoon. So you just go through this and you can start making connections. The whole lifesavers. These watchmen would go out and they would rescue the victims of ships that did crash on the rocks. They would notice them obviously up in the watchtower, and they'd go out and rescue the survivors of those shipwrecks. So that the people were also lifesavers. And that's important in some of the art. I'm not sure if it's in this one, but it's in others. Anyway, and there was a big fire there. So any event, you go through and you start underlining items in here that might be of interest, and then you make the connections to see where they lead you. They're not telling you to go to not an amusement park, but a archaeological park. They're not telling you to go there and look around. Here's the Lifesavers. This is an old ad, and sure enough, there's gremlins in it, and they are it's for Lifesavers. And one thing Byron does frequently is he will, in fact, use culture to work into the puzzle. And I've seen this over and over again. Now, this could be a coincidence, sure, but it could be intentional. Now, here's part of some of the culture. This is Morgan Le Fay, and she's in TV. Well, it started out to be a TV series, but it actually was a movie, Doctor Strange. Now, she changes from a benevolent, beautiful lady into an evil sorceress. So it's a change, kind of like the car goes through in AMC Gremlins, from a beautiful new car to stuff going bad thanks to the gremlins. They're destroying things in your car, and eventually your car is junk. And she goes from one she does a transition also from this beautiful, benevolent, and this is folklore. This is, Byron uses folklore, not just old movies. And this movie came out in 1978, and it had Morgan Le Fay in the movie, and here she is. Here's the movie Doctor Strange. You can see it on YouTube. Part of the thing in the movie, part of the process, is she pushed this guy off, and he falls to his death. Falling is part of the theme for this puzzle. Just like Morgan Le Fay, beautiful but dangerous. Lighthouses are dangerous. One of the main things is people falling to their death. Now this is just a beautiful shot of a lighthouse. This is not St. Augustine, but I like this, so that's why it's in here. Any event, here's our lighthouse. So here's the actual lighthouse at St. Augustine, and you can see there's some things going on around it. And if you look and you start thinking about it, well, what's this down here? Well, it's Lighthouse Park. Lighthouse Park. Well, what's at Lighthouse Park besides tennis courts? Oh, tennis courts have these trees with the bending branches. Oh, they have a barbecue, like the backyard barbecue, Creep. This is from backyard Creep. Barbecue, little outhouse, or whatever this structure is over here. And so that makes you take a look at what's going on in the backyard Creep. And I've covered that in another video, how that's also, this is a localization part of the puzzle as well. And Byron does that. He uses more than one fair folk. The fair folk share the clues. So we have Lighthouse Park. We're going to look around a little bit more. What else is at Lighthouse Park? Maybe there's something there that is of interest. Look at these trees. It's incredible. Here's the large cartoon that goes with backyard Creep. Oh, we got the branches, the bending branches. It's got a lot of leaves, some falling leaves. There's some grass, maybe tall grass. The bench. Now, you start thinking about these and looking closer. What do we find? St. Augustine, S.A. for St. Augustine. We have leaves. The leaves fall in the autumn, the fall. Rain falls in the art for AMC or AM Gremlins. We have something burning. We look a little closer to the backyard. We have the hexagon shape here and here. We have a nice triangle down here, which the lady is looking at. It's always important to see where these cartoon figures are looking, because those are clues. He's looking at his arm and all of this. Again, I'm not covering this. I covered this under localization in another video, but I just wanted to point that out and say, look at the heads of these individuals. I don't know of anybody that's head that is shaped like that or like that. This is a polygon shape. These in the John Jude Palencar art, what do we have up here? The beginnings of polygons, sharp edges. Natural rocks don't have sharp edges. We have like maybe a rectangle, square, an X, corner. Oh, where do we find that in our park, Lighthouse Park? Oh, look, we've got hexagons here, half hexagons. So now we got some clues that are pointing us to a certain area in the park. This is a geodesic dome that kids play on. And where is that in the park? It's right here. You can see it pretty good in this shot. We get a little closer. We got a light. Oh, a light. Is that our light in the cartoon art? And then we have a palm tree. Is that our tall tree? And then we have the shape with the polygons. So you start thinking about that, and oh, we have a corner or a rectangular shape over here. Tennis courts, parking lot. Honk, honk. Honking. In Warner von Brownie, he talks about beekeeping and hives. That's a clue to the beekeeping hive shape right here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-sided shape, hexagon. Where do we find that? Oh, we find it down here in the art and over here on the playground. Well, and lo and behold, these things are starting to make sense now. Here's the light over the tennis court. Here's our light. This is in darkness. Oh, even in darkness, our jewel is in the shadow. Well, what's causing the shadow? Well, it's probably our tree, our palm tree, but we're not sure. But there's some more clues on that. Let's go back a bit. If this light is shining at night, even in darkness, as the verse goes, it's going to put a shadow right down over here somewhere. That's where the jewel is. See, it shows it right here. There's our jewel in the shadow right here. In the shadow right here. Even in darkness, because the tennis court lights are on. Now, there's other connections in the book. The quarry photo. You got this tall tower. This is a tall tower. The lighthouse is a tall tower. Our geodesic dome. It's in the back of the book. Here's our quarry. Stars move by day. I didn't get this one. This was done by somebody on Reddit. And they actually, I'm not a fan of this, and don't hammer me, but this lines up perfectly with this shape right here. This is a shoreline. Shoreline right here. And it just so happens, here's the art. Where's the jewel? Here's the overhead shot. And they did have maps back then. If you're going to complain about, oh, we didn't have the Byron's time. Well, they had maps, they had charts. What's right across from that? Right there. Lighthouse. Jewel, 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 jewel. Right in here somewhere, right? Everything's starting to line up. Except my, what I just did. Okay, so we'll go back. So, we have the spark plug, and why Iwo Jima, I ask? What's the World War II connection to the Fountain of Youth Park? Nothing. The connection here, Iwo Jima, was performed, they raised the flag at the top, the very top of a very tall mountain. The top of a mountain. There's your flag. It's tall. What's the tallest structure in St. Augustine? Lighthouse. Bottom of the spark plug. I've talked about the fouling. What fouls a spark plug? Oil fouls a spark plug. And I talked about oil and oil drops on another video for localization, and I'm not going to cover it. That's why this spark plug was used, was fouling, gremlins are fouling the spark plug. It's the gremlins at work. Done by oil. Lastly, I'm putting in a cask mining claim. So don't dig my cask up until I get permission. If you want to dig it up, contact me, send me something. Let's get permission. Let's do it right. Let's get in there and dig, and we'll have a cask. Let's do it the right way. If you go in there and you dig it up, then what are you going to do? You're going to have to either lie about where you found it or whatever. It doesn't make any sense. Let's do it the right way. And I'll leave you with that. And a beautiful picture of a lighthouse. Beautiful but dangerous. Thank you very much.